Hey, smart children, here's what I need for you to do. I need for you to go ahead, grab your spiral notebook and your favorite pen and your favorite pencil, and come on back so that we can start taking our notes. This particular standard is a standard that is going to require us to break down what we read into smaller components, such as sentences, paragraphs, or the larger portion of the text. It's also going to ask us to pay attention to headings and the structure, okay? Why? Because we're trying to see how each part relates to the whole. Okay? All righty. Okay, so here is our objective. You guys will be able to identify the author's argument in order to determine how his or her ideas or claims are developed and refined by a particular sentence, paragraph, or a larger portion of the text. What I want you to do right now is go ahead to pause the video and make sure that you have these key terms at the bottom in your notes. You need to know what I mean when I say author or their argument or their purpose. You need to know what I mean when I say their cause, their claims, and what I mean when I say refine. So go ahead and pause the video and then come on back. All righty, thank you. Now, basically, what this standard is asking you to do is break the text down into pieces so that we can determine the logical, or so that we can make logical sense of where those pieces fit into the overall text. For example, we may pull out a sentence, read that sentence, and we want to know if this particular sentence helps to support the author's claim, or does it negatively affect their claim. So that is what we're going to do. When we're talking about developing, we're talking about the author providing details and support for their ideas. So when we go in, we're looking at the paragraphs, we're looking at the sentences. We may be looking at a whole section, and we want to make sure that these details support what they're saying, okay? If you don't know that, then you need to write that down. So you guys got to learn how to eat the meat and spit out the bone. That is a very good concept that you need to make sure that you know. Anytime we're talking about developing, we're talking about the details and the support that the author provides to prove or to hold up what they're saying, okay? So what I want you to do is take a minute and look at the image right there and tell me, what is that image and what steps do we take, or what steps do you take to complete this puzzle? All righty. So I'm going to assume that some of you all say, well, I'm going to look at the picture first, look at the box. Then I'm going to try to find all the end pieces. Some of you all may say, well, I'm going to match all the colors together, or I'm going to match all the ones that are shaped alike together, and that's fine. So we need to remember this concept that each sentence, paragraph, and section, or the image, plays an important role in helping us to understand the text. No, you don't need to write anything down on this page. This is just a page to help you have a visual to connect what we're doing. So I want you to think about this. As we're reading, we are looking at the small pieces of the text to see how they make this larger piece, how they make the larger text, okay? All right, so you've already wrote down these terms, but these terms will help you to determine the author's argument. I want you all to pause this video. I want you to take a minute, and you're going to read this excerpt. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about how repetition helps truth's argument, okay? Now, something I want you all to think about before you pause this video. I want you to think about the word how. How has several meanings. Remember, words are polysemous. That means they have multiple meanings. How means in what way, by what means, what reason, and so forth. You need to figure out what definition fits the usage of how. Right up here. I don't know, right up here. So, what definition fits this usage? And that will help guide you as you're thinking about these texts, okay? So, go ahead and pause the video and then come on back. All right, so you guys had an opportunity to read Ain't I a Woman? So, or this excerpt. Remember, excerpt is a smaller piece of a whole. One of the things that you may have noticed is the usage of repetition. Repetition. We see that Truth keeps saying, Ain't I a woman? And ain't I a woman? And ain't I a woman? And ain't I a woman? So we got to think about, what does this do for the text? Well, Truth was giving her speech, and someone, turned her speech into written work so that we can read. So there are authors who do the same thing. They may use repetition to stress their points, right? They may use repetition to develop what they're saying by elaborating. So we see her elaborating on this idea, am I not a woman also, right? Right. So when we go into our text, what we're going to do is we're going to follow these 5 steps, okay? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to read and you're going to annotate your text using diddles. As we're reading and annotating our text using diddles and your bookmark, you're going to be able to identify in your bookmarker, you're going to be able to identify the author's argument. What do I mean when I say argument? I mean his claim. And a claim is an opinion that he has to prove with evidence. Think about what we've said in class when we said that when you are an author, you become a lawyer and you need to prove what you're saying with the best piece of evidence. When we're talking about ideas, we're talking about thoughts, we're talking about beliefs, we're talking about courses of actions, okay? So you're going to be able to identify that using, as you annotate, you're looking at what they say. And what they say will give you clues to help you to determine their claim if it's not explicitly stated. You're also going to be able to identify the structure found within the text. This includes syntax. So in the later paragraphs or the later slides, it would simply be me giving you the different type of text structure and an example. The only thing that I need for you to write down is the different type of text structure. Okay, you do not have to write down that example. The next thing, number 4, is determine the function. When we're talking about function basically means the purpose, okay? And again, you see these definitions to the right, and you need to make sure that you have these definitions written down. Number 5, to evaluate. Evaluate means to judge. So we're going to judge if the author's points and claims are clear. If it's clear, that means it's easily understood, okay? All right, so I want you to pause right here. You're going to take a minute and you're going to read over this particular excerpt. And remember, we're reading this excerpt so that we can annotate it, and we're going to try to identify Cesar Chavez's argument, okay? How does the example of suffering and mistreatment help Cesar Chavez to develop his call to action? Well, what do you think the call of action is? What do you think he wants the people to know or do as a result of knowing this information? And that's a question that you always need to ask yourself. What is it that this author or any author want me to know or do? Or what is it the author wants the audience, which may not be you, what do they want the audience to know or do as a result of listening or reading their particular work? Okay? So go ahead, you take a minute, and then come on back. All righty, so you guys had an opportunity to read that. So let's look at this particular passage. He said, when they play outside, when they drink the water, and when they hung their parents return from the fields. What is he saying? Let's go back. The children live in a community surrounded by the great fields that employ their parents. So if you had not read this, we can draw an inference that the children are living in some type of farm community, right? And that their parents work for this community, right? It says the children come into contact with the poisons. Well, when do they come in contact with the poisons? When they play outside, when they drink the water, when they hug their parents. So what is it saying? This is saying that the children have no real way of escaping this, right? When you play outside, you run into poison. How does it make you feel? Think about, put yourself in their shoes. When you drink the water, you're running into poison. When you hug your mom, your dad, when they come from the fields, you're running into poison. And what happened as a result of this? The children are what? The children are dying. Now, what do you think that Cesar Chavez would want the audience or those who are listening to his speech to do? Do you think he wants the children to continue to die? Of course not. So what does this particular phrase or this particular sentence in red do for his argument? In other words, how does this detail help reinforce that something needs to be done? That's basically what we're going to be doing, because each word, each sentence, and each section all works together to help the reader understand and also to stress their point. Do you think that this particular excerpt, I'm sorry, the sentence or the phrases in red, do you think that they help his argument? Do you think they hurt his argument? We could talk about that in class. All right, now remember I told you that we're going to get into the part where I just want you to pause the video and I want you to make sure that you understand the different type of text structures. We're at that part now. So I'm not going to do a lot of talking. I'm just going to focus on what I feel like you need to know. You're going to pause the video and then you're going to think about the check for understanding questions. The first is sequential order, sequential sequence. Sequence is information that's given to you in step by step. First, second, third, and sequential order always deals with time. So you need to make sure that you know, sequential doesn't deal with time. Chronological deal with time. So some people may think, well, sequential, because we're saying first, second, and third, that it deals with time. No. Chronological deal with time. So make sure that you pause the video and write this down. So sequential and process writing needs to go on the left side, and then in the middle, you will have that information. All right, we're going to do the same thing right here for chronological. Chronological, we see that prefix chrono. Chrono deals with time. This is a time sequence from the beginning or the earliest to the latest, from the earliest time from the latest. These events are in numerical order. You know, it could be arranged by month, years, days, and actual time, like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and so forth. What this does is helps you to understand what happens and what happens next, okay? And how these things relate and how each event affect another event. So go ahead and pause, and I gave you an example of chronological order. Next, we have cause and effect. Cause and effect shows the reason and the results. The cause is the why. Why did this happen? The effect is the result. Because this happened, this was the effect of that or the result of that. Most authors use cause and effect when they want to explain how one event leads to another. Make sure you know that. Make sure you write this down. Go ahead and pause the video. Next, we have compare and contrast. When we're comparing something, we're showing how they are similar. When we are contrasting, we're showing how they are dissimilar or opposites between the objects, ideas, actions, and processes. Authors use this particular structure when they want to explain how something is alike or how something is different. Okay? Take a look at the example and make sure that you understand that this is comparison and contrast. Something else you should know, you might want to take this down, that a text as a whole can be in chronological order, but you may have a paragraph that is comparing and contrasting. So you need to make sure that you can identify the whole and also the excerpt, the small pieces. We need to be able to go from deductive, or I shouldn't even use it with you all. We need to be able to pull out the smaller portions of the text and to be able to identify their textual structure as well. Problem and solution. You guys know about problem and solution. We all do. A problem is an issue that is described, and the solution is the respond to. Okay? This may tell why the problem or the issue exists, and then it may or may not give the solution, or when I'm talking about solution, how we solve the problem. Okay? Next is spatula or descriptive writing. This is basically information that is organized in space, top, bottom, left, right. It also gives you details about how things fit together. So spatula is the one that deals with the space. The description, we're talking about things that paint an image on your mind, okay? So you have an example of that below. Next, we're going to talk about syntax. Syntax is basically when we refer to the way words are arranged within sentences. You should have your diddles packet, and in your diddles packet, I have provided you with some information about syntax. When we're looking at syntax, we're looking at the punctuation of paragraph division, we're looking at the length, we're looking at the contrast in diction, and we know diction is word choice. We're always looking for patterns of construction, because the construction of the sentences always convey an attitude. If it's short, and from your own experience, if someone is being short with you, you ask them a question. Yes. Are you hungry? No. Did you eat anything today? Yes. What does that do? That sends a message, right? That sends an attitude. Same thing when we're looking at the written language, okay? Punctuation is very important to analyze as well, and we will be looking at our syntax packet, okay? All right, so we're about to wrap this up. Here's what we're going to be focusing on with this particular standard. We're focusing on the key ideas and the claims and what is presented in the text, and how the sentences, the paragraphs and sections, and even other chapters help support this claim. How do they elaborate, or how do they help us to understand what the author is trying to say? How does this portion develop the text? How does it refine the text? What features you notice, and what does those features do? Again, annotating with a purpose will help you master this. And if you're using diddles, you got it. If you're using your bookmarker, which is your notice and your wanderings, you got it. Here's what I want you all to do, and we're about to end. I provided an example of how this particular standard is asked on EOC, or even your weekly test that you will have each week after we read a particular text. You will see this. So you need to make sure that you understand how quote sentences, paragraphs, even sentence structure help to develop the author's main idea or their claim. Also, when we're looking at other type of information, we're looking at the headings. Like, what does these headings do? How do they help us to understand the document? And this is an example of a real workplace document, okay? I provided relevant reasons for you so that you can understand that everything that you do in my class is to help you to have a life beyond the classroom. All right, sweethearts, make sure that you take good detailed notes, and I will see you in class. Have a good day.